You have your Bibles, turn to Jeremiah chapter 31. Open the app as well, we'll be there. Part here. This is a story I really like. I told before. There was this town in Maine, full of maniacs, as all towns in Maine are. But it was a cute little town, and they were actually putting in a hydroelectric dam in the river, and how the river was going to get reflowed, this town was going to get submerged underwater. And so, all the, bureaucratic rigmarole took place, and everyone was informed, and they were paid, and they were upset, but they were paid money, and they basically said, actually, it's going to actually take a couple of years before this is done, so you can take this money and live here rent-free, until everything is ready. And within 3 months, the town got condemned. You stop painting your houses, you stop fixing windows, you stop filling potholes, you start, as people start leaving, houses get turned into crack dens. I don't know how quick that, maybe that's 2 months down the road. I don't know how quick crack dens start showing up. But the town just got devastated, and within 3 months, they had to come in and condemn it, since it's not where you can't even live here anymore. And one of the comments that one of the people made about it, I think is really insightful. He says, where there is no faith in the future, there is no power for the present. When there's no hope, when there's no hope for the future, that's chaos. You really do, there's a line from Men in Black that, Agent J tries to argue, well, people are reasonable. He says, no, a person is reasonable. People are insane. People are stupid. So, when you get a crowd of people, that's why, somebody, you win a World Cup and the city just burns to the ground. There's just chaos in crowds like that. Now, there's a great verse, and it was actually many of your guys' favorite verses when we were doing the testimonies. I heard multiple people bring up Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. I think it's Jeremiah. Jeremiah 29, verse 11. It says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Now, this is oftentimes taken out of context a little bit, so let's make sure we put it into context. So we'll start in Jeremiah chapter 29 and verse 4. And it says this, thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles whom I have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Okay? So here is God speaking to the prophet Jeremiah, and he is saying, alright, to all the exiles, alright, people that are going to be taken from Israel and brought to Babylon. Alright? This is who he's speaking to. So this takes place. Now, this is written and around 630 BC, and this doesn't happen for until 586 BC. So this is 40 years. He's speaking. It's confusing because he's speaking in such he's speaking in the past tense, where he's saying whom I have sent into exile. But he's talking about a future event, but he's talking about it in such a way this is so sure from happening that this is the message you're going to read in the future. Alright, I'm writing a message to you in the future. Alright, and then you're going to read it, and it'll be a past event when you read it. And this is what's so interesting about, I think, both Isaiah and Jeremiah, and the time in which they're written. He writes about these future events that talks about it in the past tense. And it's such a cool picture of just how sure God is. God isn't predicting the future. Alright, he is saying, I'm going to write in a way that talks about the past, even though it hasn't happened yet. Alright, and so there's going to be a time where Nebuchadnezzar sends his armies, alright, to come in and conquer Israel, and they take 500,000 people with it. This is Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Daniel, that group of people, alright, back to them with Babylon. And here's the message he has for these future people, but they're going to be in exile when they actually read this. So they're going to be reading it like this. Build houses, verse 5, and live in them. Plant gardens, eat their produce. Take wives and have your sons and daughters take wives for your sons, and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there. Do not decrease. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord on its behalf. For in its welfare, you will find your welfare. All right, really interesting stuff. So he says, you're going to be brought into exile. And in fact, he's going to say for a moment, you're not actually even going to be there all that long. You're going to be there 70 years, is what he's going to say. But he says, don't sit around and just say, like, listen, why even build a house? We're here temporarily. Why should I even plant a garden? We're here temporarily. Why should I even be looking to get married? I'm here temporarily. So no. You need to get there, you build a house. You plant those seeds. You build that crop. You marry off your sons and your daughters. Alright? Care about the welfare of the city. It would be easy to say, like, no. Don't do anything that helps your captors. Don't do anything that helps this temporary place where you're living. God says the opposite. He says, in fact, your welfare is dependent on the welfare of the city. One thing that's kind of interesting over my political lifetime, which my political lifetime, is kind of when you start able to start paying attention to politics in some kind of way. So, I'm 16 years old when the 2000, the hanging chads, and 2000 where, Gore and Bush are fighting it out. That's kind of my political awareness. Like, I don't really remember, much things happening politically before that point. We had, 8 years of Bush and then 8 years of Obama, and 4 years of Trump, and now a couple months that seems like years and years of Biden. We've had these very big political swings, and right after elections, there's always the same thing. I hope they fail. I hope Bush fails. I hope Obama fails. I hope Trump fails. From the other side, there's always this hope that they fail. And it is a weird phenomenon. You mean, like, really? Like, I'm sure there were thoughts of, I hope Biden fails. Like, I don't know, it kind of hurts me if Biden fails. Gas prices kind of hurt me. I don't think, like, I'm not glad that, like, Biden has a terrible energy policy because it kind of hurts me. So there is this, like, battle that goes on in our minds of, yes, we want our political enemies to be punished, but then we kind of realize, like, wait, doesn't that end up kind of hurting me too? And this is God saying, like, don't try to hurt your political enemies when it comes to the Babylonians. Don't try to hurt that city. Don't turn around and say, like, you bring us in exile, you bring us away from our homes, we are going to make your lives a living nightmare. Because if you make their lives a living nightmare, your life becomes a living nightmare. And so he says, do what's best for the city. Do what's good for them. And put down roots. Build a nice house. The thought would be like, yeah, but like, I'm not even going to be in this house the rest of my life. My grandkids aren't in this house. They think very multi-generational back. Even in that part of the world now, if you go, we went from Israel proper into, Bethlehem, which is occupied by Palestine. All the homes they're all under construction. Like, there isn't a single house that isn't being built on, because whether you build on top of it or next to it, your sons start building an addition onto your home, like, right away. All right? Once they turn like 12, 13, 14 years old, they start building. So, like, when you go, you work for a couple hours, you go work with your uncle, at his construction job, and you come back and you come back with 2 cinder blocks, and you've made 2 more cinder blocks for the wall of your home. And you're just constantly building a little structure that when you get married, you're going to move into. Because you can't get married until you have the addition on your home ready. Alright, and so you are constantly building on hope. So this was their mindset. They're like, why would I build a house? Why would I build a house that I'm only going to be in for a generation or two? They said, that doesn't seem to make sense. I'd rather just live in a tent. He says, no. Don't live in a tent. Don't live in a tent. Why should I plant harvests and collect seeds for the next year? He says, yeah, because you're going to be here longer than you think. All right? And you're going to do what's good for the city. If you don't plant those seeds and you can barely just get by, how do you help other people? How do you be a blessing to other people that might be in need if you don't seek your own success in this way? So the first kind of point he makes, hard and strong, is do what's best for those around you. Do what's best for you and your family, but be a blessing to your community, even if that community is wicked and evil like Babylon. Alright? For them to mention this right off the bat, thus the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles who have sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. I know it doesn't necessarily gut punch you in the same way, but the Babylonians were just seen as so wicked. They were just seen as so pagan. To just say that name, that you're going to be living in Babylon, it might be an expression a little bit when you hear in Revelation, the whore of Babylon. There is this, supposed to be this guttural reaction away from it, ugh, Babylon is so terrible. Sin city. And he says, yes, you're going to go there and I want you to do what's best for them. Seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord on its behalf. They're pagan. They're not going to pray. They're not going to pray to me. You pray on their behalf. Alright? Multiply and don't decrease. Easy mentality would be this world is falling apart. Why would we want to have children? We're in exile. Why would we want to have children? Why would we want to bring children into this mess? And God's like, stop. No. Multiply. Yeah, sure, it's a mess. So why would we want less godly people to populate it the next generation? It's super ungodly right now. You start to multiply. Have lots of kids. Watch what happens by the next generation. Have more kids. Watch what happens next generation. It's very easy to see, right now in America, that our population is shrinking. Our population, our birth rate is shrinking. Now, if you actually look at, isn't America actually growing through immigration, not through childbirth? And so where we might say it's a mess. And partly it's because many people are abdicating, saying I don't want to bring children into this mess, because I don't want them to have to deal with these problems. And the truth is, no, they would solve the problems. If we raise children well and correctly, godly children, they would solve the problems that were coming their way, not adding to them. Verse 8. Next kind of little point he makes here. For thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, do not let your prophets and your diviners who are among you deceive you. Do not listen to the dreams that they dream, for it is a lie that they are prophesying to you in my name. I did not send them, declares the Lord. So there's going to be people living amongst you, and he's in fact saying other Israelites, other people that are in your midst. They're going to call themselves prophets. They're not prophets. They're going to be diviners, people that divine mediums, divining spirits and tarot cards, things like that. So he said, that's not from me. I don't do that stuff. Don't believe their lies. They're going to try to deceive you using language and godly-like language. This is what's so important of knowing theology, knowing God's Word, is it helps prevent people that are trying to twist that stuff, that are trying to twist the words of God from being able to be successful in doing so. And so he's warning them, there's going to be people that use godlike language to convince you about things that are not true. They're lies. They're trying to deceive you. They're dreams that aren't real. I did not send them. Last little piece. For thus says the Lord, when 70 years are complete for Babylon, I will visit you. I will fulfill to you my promise and bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. So certainly those verses, anytime you hear Jeremiah 29:11, I always want you to remember that this is a promise made to the soon-to-be exiled Israelites in Babylon. That they have hope, that you're going to be in this land for 70 years. Now it's interesting, if you read something right now, everybody in this room, maybe outside of a couple in the front row, a couple back there, when you hear about something happening 70 years from now, you're not going to see it. Pastor Al, you are not going to be around 70 years from now. I hate to be the person that breaks this to you, that in 70 years, you're not going to be on this earth anymore. I am willing. Anybody want to take a bet against that? All right? Matt's voting that Pastor Al's going to be 133 before he leaves us. I'm not taking that bet. I'm going to say he doesn't make it to 133. So many people that are going to read this are going to say like, oh, it's so far away. Oh, that's not what I think of as soon. It's easy for God to be like, yeah, it's soon. Right? It's easy for us, looking back, 1,000 years ago, yeah, of course it's pretty quick. How when you're reading it? 70 years seems like a long time. But what he's saying is, the promises I've made, I'm going to keep. And that is true for us. This is not our home. However long you've lived in Hudson, this is not your home. Temporary place. Mostly, get about 70 years. Get about 70 years on this earth, maybe 80, hopefully get pushed to 90. Alright? You got a very temporary time here on this earth, and then you get to see the fulfilled promises of God. Then God brings you back home. God brings you back to where you really belong, heaven. You're like, where? Heaven. Alright? Then God's promise is going to happen. It's just going to take a long time. And our thought process is not one of, well, why should I do anything here? This is so temporary. This isn't my home. I don't belong here. Why would I want good things to happen to this earth? Why would I want to be a blessing to other people around me? Why would I want to hire people and help them become wealthy? Why would I want to do things like that? Why would I want to provide for people? And he's saying, yeah, because I told you to. You're not to treat this world. It is fleeting, but you aren't to treat it that way. Because I am sending you into this world to be a blessing. You are being sent to Babylon to be a blessing to them. You're being sent to lead this remnant. Now, we can't be 100% sure, and I don't know if it's the Babylonian Empire or the Persian Empire. There's little disagreements. But I love the story where the wise men are coming from the east to visit Jesus. How do they know a Messiah is being born? I can tell you how they know a Messiah is going to be born. Because Israel was living in Babylon, living in Persia, living in these places. And when this star appears out of nowhere, and these astrologers are like, there is a stinking star that's not moving, and I've never seen it before. And it's angled right above where we would think the fixed position of Israel. What? Like, this is this Messiah that the Jews have been prophesying about. And they come to travel to see the king. All right? They knew this because the message of the good news of God had started to filter into these other cultures. This is what God wanted. He wanted the promises that God was making to Israel to start infiltrating more people around the world. And when he starts making promises in the Old Testament, he's saying, one day there's going to be a people that aren't my people, alright? That they're going to say that I'm their God, even though I've never been their God in the past. Us Gentiles know who God is because the Israelites had spread throughout the earth. Then the gospel spreads throughout the Jewish people in the early century. It starts spreading to where the Gentiles were. We got the gospel because of what God did in the exile, in the diaspora. When we read the book of Acts, we always see Paul like going to this synagogue in Rome, and this synagogue in Galatia, and this synagogue in Corinth, in Colossae, in Rome. All the other places were great. Alright? We see him go to these synagogues. It's where the Jewish people were, and the gospel starts spreading from these cities, from these exiled diaspora people that were spread throughout the earth. So when we read this little doctrinal statement here, a little long, understand that what we are trying to reflect is to be those people that are bringing welfare to the city. All Christians are under obligation to seek to make the will of Christ supreme in our own lives and in human society. Means and methods used for the improvement of society and the establishment of righteousness among men can be truly and permanently helpful only when they are rooted in the regeneration of the individual by the saving grace of God in Jesus Christ. In the spirit of Christ, Christians should oppose racism, every form of greed, selfishness, and vice, and all forms of sexual immorality, including adultery, homosexuality, pornography. We should work to provide for the orphan, the needy, the abused, the aged, the helpless, and the sick. We should speak on behalf of the unborn and contend for the sanctity of all human life from conception to natural death. Every Christian should seek to bring industry, government, and society as a whole under the sway of the principles of righteousness, truth, and brotherly love. In order to promote these ends, Christians should be ready to work with all men of goodwill in any good cause, always being careful to act in the spirit of love without compromising their loyalty to Christ and His truth. Easier to write than to live. Right? But our goal should always be to oppose what is evil and cling to what is good. So we are to oppose things like racism. Certainly this country has had some horrific actions throughout its time in the areas of racism. There is still some remnants that have yet to be eradicated in the individual evil hearts of men. We are opposed to this. Not only do we know that we are all one race, we all come from Adam, we all come from one person, alright, and we really are just lighter brown and darker brown. Alright, we all know that all believers are saved through Jesus Christ, as he says there now is no more distinction between Jew and Greek and slave and free and male and female, that we are all one under Christ. Alright, and so we know that salvation is by grace through faith alone for whoever believes. That we certainly don't think of anything that one race of people is more worthy or less worthy of the gospel. We certainly wouldn't want to put a whole race of people as being more godly or less godly, more likely to accept Christ or less likely to accept Christ. And so in any area of our life, we wouldn't want to see any grouping of people, whether grouped by race or any other thing, diminished, hurt, attacked for any reason. We would always want to oppose any time we saw someone being oppressed for anything that was different about the way they look. There are still going to be opportunities, even in our life today, to stand up for the truth that all people are worthy of God's love, to stand up for the truth, are unworthy of God's love, and are able to trust Christ in the gospel. There's going to be moments that we have to stand up, that all people are valuable in the sight of Christ, that they are in the image of God. There are going to be times when we see people treated unfairly, and we are going to need to step up and do what is right, even when it is not easy. When we talk about greed, this is certainly something our country faces, that we look at money, that greed isn't even seen as a negative thing. Right? That it's almost valued. We can see we can see how the description in Jeremiah 29 that there are going to be people in God's name trying to point out all these things that aren't truly coming from God. Here's God saying that money is the root of all forms of evil, and the love of money is the root of all forms of evil. And yet loving money is one of the kind of cornerstones of our society. We believe that money will solve all our problems. We look at any problem we face, and so often we think, if I only had more money, I would be able to solve this problem. And it shows what we really trust. It shows what our God really is. If we look at any problem and say, man, if I had enough money, I could buy a doctor to do what I need done. If I had enough money, I could fix whatever problem is being faced. What we're doing, we're trusting in money as opposed to trusting in God, because money is our God. When we look at selfishness, this is the cornerstone of our society here. Our cornerstone is the message of any Disney movie is be true to yourself. All right? It's basically a message of that you are right. All right? That deep down inside you are right and everyone else is wrong. All right? And that you should seek your own blessing and your own pleasure above all else. All right? We look at all sorts of things that become vices in our life. We look at all sorts of things that are celebrated in our society. All sorts of things that become addicted. In 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12, it warns us, don't let anything capture us. Don't let anything rule over us. All right? And whether that thing is one of the more obvious addictions like drugs or alcohol, or maybe one of the less obvious addictions like food and other areas, that we can look at those things and say, no, I don't want anything that is going to rule my life. All right? And that we look and we got to oppose these things. Same thing with sexual immorality. In our society today, nothing is immoral. Adultery is just excuses. We might even say that, adultery is bad, but all of a sudden you give a good enough excuse and then people begin to understand. Homosexuality is framed as, why should people not be able to love who they want to love? And it's a false equivalent. I want everyone to love everyone. Alright? The idea of what you're arguing for is not for a right for someone to love another person. You're fighting for sexual immorality. We're going to talk about this more next week. We're going to look at our final message. We're going to be looking at many of the LGBT issues that have kind of taken over our society. And there have been these false equivalents across the board, and we've got to look at what God's Word truly says about what He wants and He desires. The issue that we see in homosexuality is I'm determining what's right and wrong. I'm not looking for another source of truth of what God is saying is right and wrong, what God is saying the plans He has for our life. We are becoming our own gods. We are determining what we want to live for and how we want to live without any respect for what God wants. We look at pornography and we view it as something that has no victim. Of course there are victims. Not only are you the victim, but there are victims that are bringing, that you are using to bring you pleasure. They are the victims, and we are ignoring them. He tells us to take care, that we are to take care of the orphaned, whether fostering or adopting or supporting those who do. We are told to take care of the needy, taking care of those that have needs that we can meet. That our neighbors are in need and we have the ability to meet that need, we are expected to do so. With the abused, we are expected to not just look the other way, but to help. That we are to visit the elderly, to take care of them, not to shove them aside out of our society when they are no longer useful to us. We shouldn't be viewing people as whether or not they're useful to us or not. Alright? This is how selfishness takes root in our life. We're friends with the employees at work that can help us advance in our careers. We ignore those that can't, and we do the same thing in our family life and with our friends. If somebody helps us in some way, we're happy to have them in our life. But right when they are kind of past their goodbye date, we no longer are interested in their friendship. All right? We are to help those that cannot help us in return. Alright, this is the value of helping the helpless. It helps remind us that we can't just every relationship can't be this quid pro quo that, like, I get something from them and they get something from me. We should be helping people that have no means to help us in return. This helps us know that we are staying focused on the mission that Christ had for us. Christ loved us when we were unlovable. Christ loved us in a way that we could do nothing in return. What He did for us in salvation, there's nothing we can do to reciprocate that. There's nothing we can do to benefit Him. There's nothing we can do that helps Him in any way. He can do everything without us. So when we have relationships, if all our relationships are, yeah, they help me in some way, we are not reflecting what the love of Christ looked like. We should be helping people that cannot help us. We are to help the sick. We are to help the unborn. Talk about the ultimate group of people that are helpless. They fit so many of these categories. All right? They are the most vulnerable among us, and they cannot help themselves. It does take us advocating and helping and supporting the unborn. Those that are housing the unborn, we should be helping them, encouraging them, loving on them, providing for them. All right? This is what we should be doing and is the right thing to be doing. We are always supporting the living. Life is worth fighting for. We never want to be on the side of death and destruction. We never want to be on the side of euthanasia. I think there are really tough situations. I think when you take I teach like a biblical ethics class. It's easy to see really difficult situations where people are in horrific pain, and you want that pain to be eased. So I don't want to pretend that this isn't a complex issue. I think it is. Where I say we always want to be on the side of is supporting life, that life is worth fighting for, that life is worth living for, that God is the one that we trust when it comes to things beyond our pay grade, like life and death. We can trust God in these areas. We are awaiting God's miraculous work and actions. So to summarize a little bit, we can't want to see the corrupt world burn around us. All right? We can't want that. I know there's this tendency to want to see people's sinful lifestyles destroy them. I hope our hope of, yes, God, I pray that they can hit rock bottom in order for them to trust you and praise you. If there's any thought in our mind of, I hope they fail, I hope this collapses, I hope this evil person gets what they're due, I hope it's with the mindset of so that when they hit rock bottom, they can turn to their Creator and Savior and put their faith and trust in Him and radically change their life. Wanting to see the world burn around us is not something that we see Jesus do, as we'll look here in a moment. Alright, we can't ignore its problems because they're not ours. Alright, it's easy to look at this world around us and say, good, I get to go to heaven, I don't have to worry about this. But we are to influence this world because our children and our children's children are going to live here. Alright, if the Lord waits to return, alright, that if He waits, that we are to be preparing this and like saying, hey, I want my kids to be in a position to better influence this community for the gospel. All right, we should do good for the world around us. All right, we should be looking for those things that say, all right, the people that we're working with and we talk about partnering with, not everybody is going to have the purest motive. Our motives are going to be pure. We desire things like love, and we will not compromise what we believe about Christ and His gospel. We should help sinful people, but not help them sin, of course. Not help them sin, but help sinful people. We're not willing to help sinful people. We're basically just saying we're not willing to help people. When we look at Jesus here in Luke 4, I can pull 1,000 different passages, grab Luke 4:40. Now when the sun was setting, all those who had any who were sick with various diseases brought them to him, and he laid his hands on every one of them and healed them. Let me tell you some things about these people. I did some deep research into who these people were. Every one of them were sinners. Jesus healed sinners. Every one of them sinned again after this. It's true. It's true. Deep research. Every one of them, every one of these people he heals, they sinned again later on. But Jesus, even knowing they would sin, healed them anyway. Did you know that every one of these people, I looked up every name, and every one of them died? Every one of them died after this. So Jesus heals them, and they died like 15, 20, 30 years later. Every one of them. Didn't hear about that. The wise old elder of our group passed her out. Be like, amazing. That's amazing. He's twice the age of the average man. Back then. Every one of them died a few years later. But Jesus healed them anyway. Yes! Yes, because at the time, they were people who were in need. And so he helped them. He's not out thinking the room. He's not sitting there like, what's he doing? He's not this like, emo Jesus who's saying, oh, why help anybody? This is why they hair on this. Why help anybody? What's the point? What's the point of anything? We're all going to die. Right? Jesus didn't do that. Right? Jesus did nothing in him that's saying, they're all just sinners, they're all going to die anyway, they're all going to sin again. What's the point? The point is they were in need and needed help. The point is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. The point is that until you meet that physical need, they'll never even begin to realize the spiritual need they have. When you're hungry, it's hard to be convinced that, no, you don't need, actual food. You need spiritual food in which you'll never hunger again. Jesus is always making these statements of, if you knew who I was, then I'd give you this living water where you never thirst again. That's as he's getting this lady water. This is as they're feeding the 5,000. You know the bread of life, right? But it's as he's helping them, he's meeting that physical need in order to explain to them that your true need is spiritual. Jesus did all this anyway, and he gave us a pattern to follow. He gave us a pattern to follow. We help people that cannot help us. We help people because we know that there's a chance that in that good, all right, that the gospel can be spread. The gospel has a chance. I don't know, it's little things that I can notice when I go to different hospitals. When you look around, the hospitals that have been built in this country, they're not built by atheists. There's not actually a lot of money in hospitals. They're not built by atheists. They're not built by Muslims. They're not built by Hindus. They're Christian hospitals. They're built by Adventists. Right? They're Christians. Right? They're built by Baptists. Some of them are Christians. Right? They're built by Presbyterians. They're built by Mennonites. They're built by Moravians. When you look at these hospital groups, you're like, oh, that's interesting. Now, many of them have unfortunately abandoned their Christian mission. But a lot of them, you'll still see that they have these little chaplain offices they've got an influence of the gospel that can come into these places. All right, because our kind of present day church is trying to abdicate from all these good services. They're trying to abdicate from all these humanitarian aids, that we're pulling ourselves out of society. Now, this is not what Christ describes in Scripture. No, get yourself right smack dab in the middle of the city. Be in the world, not of it, but be right in the middle of it, helping. We brought up a lot of concepts and save any LGBTQ sort of questions for next week. We'll be focused on that next week. But any other questions you have here this morning, I don't want to cut that. I don't want to eliminate that totally if there's something that is on your mind. If anybody's online and has something, we'll let Chuck type up. Anything come to your mind?
No, they won't text you.
You grab me after the service if you have any questions. Let's pray together. Jesus, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the work you've done in us. We thank you for the promises that you have, that anytime we see the craziness going on in this world, we can be reminded it's temporary. This isn't my home. I'm going home soon. I'm going home soon. But in the meantime, any evil that we see, we want to overcome that evil with good. Any brokenness we see, we want to repair that brokenness with your gospel. Any failures that we see in our society, we should not look at it and say, yeah, I didn't break it, not my problem. I didn't do it, not my problem. We should look and say, okay, God, I see this failure in my community. What do you want me to do to fix it? We don't say how to do that. Some people want to solve some of these things politically. Some people want to solve these things through humanitarian aid. Some people want to solve these things on an individual, one-to-one basis. God, you're not telling us how to do it. All right, just that we can do it. You're not telling us how to take care of the needy and the poor and the helpless and the sick. You're just telling us that you are responsible for this. So God, I pray that we are open, that we are sensitive to your word. Let us have our eyes open for anyone that is oppressed around us. Anyone that is facing challenges, injustices. Let us have compassion. Let us bring them the hope that they can have in you. We love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So we have a prayer question. Yeah.
Okay. Pro-life, pro-choice,
yes.
In our country, what's our role? In one comment, I am hearing anti-choice. I don't think pro-life anymore. Anti-choice. That's why we.
Yeah.
What's our role?
We're always fighting for the right language. Language is power. I think similar to what I was kind of saying at the end here, that God doesn't tell us how. So, for instance, like there isn't anything that we open up Scripture and He says, you better be out in front of abortion clinics picketing with signs. That's not something He tells us like that's what you have to do. There are Christians that do that. I would certainly say that we are not, at 1 Corinthians 13, we are not to break the law. Any quote-unquote Christian that breaks the law for a greater good, like I'm going to blow up an abortion clinic, that's wrong. It's easy to look at that and say, yeah, that's wrong. It's wrong to kill abortion doctors. It's wrong to blow up buildings. Like, that's sinful. It's breaking the law, and we are to obey the laws of the land. And so that's easy. We don't sin for greater good. It's not, we'll do something bad for a good result. Okay? But I would say that if you are a politician, then I certainly think this is a political fight for you. I think if you're not a politician, I don't think it has to be a political fight for you. I think the principle remains the same. I think your helping can be, I know a single mom that is, debating about whether or not to have a baby, and I want her to know I'll help her and provide for you and do whatever I can to help you is what I want you to know. I'm here to help you. I'll help your baby when it's born. Like, we're here. The church, we're here for you. We want to help you. I think being loving in that sense can be this great tool that, okay, this is what God has called you to do to help in this area. So no, I don't think there's a broad, this is how you're supposed to act, like that we're all, meant to, this is the way we're supposed to handle this politically. The politics are always complex, and so God knows they're complex. God doesn't write the Bible, God doesn't write the Bible to politicians to oversee people. He writes it to people. All right? And so we as an individual are responsible for what God is doing. And I don't think that means that all I have to worry about is making sure I don't have an abortion or my family isn't going to do it. What our goal is, I want to be good and light and hope in the world and encourage things in the area of life that little babies need advocates, like the old Ronald Reagan quote. It's funny that everybody that argues for abortion has been born. We have to communicate to people, but I don't think all that communication is always in the political realm. I actually maybe even feel like the work, not the worst place, but it's not the best place for it. I do expect you're in politics, you need to be advocating in that arena. Just like whatever arena you're in, you need to be advocating in that arena. Any other kind of, did I skirt around it too much, or did I kind of, wasn't trying to?
We were discussing a little bit about the term pro-life versus anti-choice. That was just an uncommon.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I'm not calling you out like, hey, stop talking like that. This is a class.
No,
you're fine. I think languages. It's because who wouldn't want to be pro-life? That is why that language is being fought. That's why nobody calls themselves pro-abortion. They call themselves pro-choice because that sounds much better. And we call ourselves pro-life, not anti-choice, because it sounds better. Like the fight in politics is a fight over language. I think, one of the things that is an interesting fight that we fight for is like, well, are we pro-life and all others? I've seen people attack pro-lifers because they're like, many pro-lifers are also pro-death penalty. But then they're pro-life. Well, how can you be pro-life in one way and not the other? And we start going around like, and that's why I said the political sphere is really hard. That's one of the reasons why I have, I am not as pro-death penalty as I used to be. But my also real answer is, it doesn't actually matter what I think on that. I have no say in that arena. So I'm not worried about that arena. I'm worried about my arena. And again, if somebody, kills my family, we'll see if I see it differently. But I want to be on the side of people coming to know Christ. And that includes being born, that includes not being killed through anything, that includes a whole bunch of not, killing themselves with a whole bunch of drugs. I want to be on the side of life, because life has the possibility of change. Life equals change, so there's the potential for people's lives to be changed through the power of God. We're alive. Good question. Anything else, Judge Brian? I don't advocate for a certain type of political action or belief or communication in the political sphere. I just want us to always. I think something I've noticed is talking about pro-life. I've said this before. I think one area that the church has hurt themselves a little bit is we wouldn't want to create an atmosphere of someone choosing to get an abortion. So I don't know someone personally, but I knew someone that they were so scared to tell their church that they got pregnant that they basically went and got an abortion, because the thought of telling their church they got pregnant outside of marriage was a worse thought to them than hiding it. So what I hope, I don't feel like I'm compromising anything to say no, I don't, I want you to follow what God's plan is in sexuality, and Kids plan is for when a person is married, that is the rightful place for sexual expression. And pregnancy in a marriage is a blessing, and outside of marriage, certainly more complicated. But I wouldn't want anybody to think that, it's better to get an abortion than to tell their church that they're pregnant, because I want the answer to be, if one of our kids in here, years down the road, please Lord, comes to us and is like, I got pregnant, I hope they would know, how do we help you? What do you need? We love you. Like, we have all 4 people that will adopt your baby if you don't actually great. But I want them to know that they would be loved, and that isn't going to compromise that, like, oh, you're wrong, you know you're wrong, we'll deal with it. But we love this little baby that is inside. We don't want you to think that you have to live in shame the rest of your life. We've all sinned, and sin always has the opportunity for real repentance, and we want you to repent. But man, that baby is a blessing. Babies are blessings, and there are no exceptions to that expression. But it's hard to communicate. I did, but it's still hard to communicate. I wouldn't want anybody to think an abortion is a better alternative than telling the church.